Welcome to Sitcom Showdown 112. My name is Jeff, and I'm here with my brother Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, listeners.
So, this time around, finally, Steve, we're getting to the sitcom known as Not Going Out.
Yep.
Now, this was requested yonks ago by Kieran Scott, and I kept promising that we were going to get to it. And today is that day.
Well done, Jeff.
Yes. Particularly, we found one that's very highly regarded in terms of Not Going Out episodes, and amazingly, it was available on YouTube. Yeah.
I really am impressed by the fact that you can get the complete episodes
It's amazing,
on
isn't it?
YouTube, yeah.
So
Really
this is one called Escape Room. Now, it's Series 9, Episode 2, and it went out on March the 15th, 2018. Have I left anything vital out?
No, but I was going to ask you, have you done an escape room?
No, what about you?
No, never.
So we're not going to be bringing any of our personal experiences to the table and going,
No.
I lived through something similar, I can relate.
No.
No.
But I do get the feeling that this was written by someone with an affection for escape rooms.
Ah, right. Well, we're going to talk about
Yes.
the writer at one point.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Lee co-wrote this, so maybe he did an escape room. Anyhow, I'll give the dear listener our one-sentence synopsis for the episode that we're looking at. Lee's birthday surprise turns into a frantic race against time as he, Lucy, their parents, and friends must solve puzzles to escape a locked room before a potentially real bomb explodes.
Yeah.
As for the sitcom Not Going Out in its broader sense, overall, it's a British sitcom created by and starring Lee Mack. It's been broadcast on BBC One. It is one of the longest running British sitcoms, and so the show's longevity and the popularity itself are impressive. So it must have good gags and a solid cast to be going for that long, and the cast, I feel, is indeed good. Anyway, it's been running since 2006. We've had 13 series or seasons of it, over 100 episodes as well, so far out. But yeah, it does centre around Lee, who's described in some of the notes I've got here as a lazy and unambitious man who finds himself in humorous, awkward situations. But anyway, yeah, he's started out, because the series has changed massively over time as far as the premise goes. But yeah, so he was a lodger in a flat owned by his best friend Tim, and then he was attempting to win the affections of Tim's sister Lucy, which we know he does. And yeah, so it's all about, just friends and family and relating to them and the weird situations they all find themselves in. But then it becomes, Lee and Lucy's relationship and kids. Yep. And by the end of the 7th series, anyway, they get married. And that's a whole new chapter in the sitcom. So the 3 kids are Charlie, Benji, and Molly, none of whom are in this episode, I should point out. Yes.
They're at home with a babysitter.
Anyway, so Lee sort of went from being that lazy, carefree lodger to now being a family man and all that sort of thing. So yes, he's had to become an actual grown-up. Oh no, boo. Yes, so Lucy's parents, Jeffrey and Wendy, they also provide a bit of tension with their unsolicited advice and opinions on parenting and lifestyle choices and all that, which is something that I'm sure every parent has to deal with when you've got grandparents saying, I wouldn't do that. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Luckily, I've never had to
We
do
use
that.
cloth nappies.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yes, we're not going to start any parenting debates, or we'll have people in the comments section. Okay, so this has won a few awards, Steve.
The episode or the
the sitcom itself?
Yep.
Yeah. British Comedy Awards. So it got nominated in 2007 for Best TV Comedy Actor for Lee and Best New TV Comedy Scripted, which the best comedies are, in my opinion. Then it got a Rose d'Or Light Entertainment Festival Golden Rose for the sitcom in 2007, which is pretty smashing. The Royal Television Society Awards in 2007 again. So the show won the Breakthrough Award. Then in the National Television Awards, it was nominated for Most Popular Comedy Series in 2016. Which, when you think that something's getting nominated for awards 9 years after it starts, that's not too bad. And you'll like this one, or perhaps not. The Night of Illumination Awards. The show received multiple nominations for lighting design in all sorts of categories between 2009 and 2014. I've never heard of the Night of Illumination.
Sounds a bit esoteric to me.
I'd like to witness one of those ceremonies. It'd be incredibly well lit.
You have to do the secret handshake on the way into the awards.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, we are about to go on to talk about the cast of this show, but before we do that, Steve, let's have a little clip.
There must be a logical way of working out this. We need to examine all the clues in the room. And I say we start with that swan over there.
Hang on. Why is he in charge?
Because in any hostage situation, a natural order begins to take place. One person becomes the leader. Others decide to stand on a table and become a stripper.
This is how the Nazis started.
All locked in an underground bunker with their husbands and wives. Actually, I think that's how the Nazis ended.
Now, we've covered shows, Steve, that have got much bigger casts than this.
6 or 7 minimum.
Yeah, I'm
The
thinking
ensemble.
Hello,
Yeah.
which is enormous.
Yep.
Yeah, is one for a start. But I've got 9 names to get through here, so I'm going to hammer through very quickly. Another little asterisk I'm going to put on this is for this section of my notes. I did delve into AI for the first time and sort of get AI to create these notes for me. So it's not in my usual tone when I have to spend hours typing stuff up myself.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to say, Tim Vine was the first man on the moon and he blah, 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 blah. So bear with me.
So
Anyway,
this is just the people or just the characters in this specific
what
episode?
I have done is I've thrown in people who were previously long-time cast members.
okay,
So
yep.
we're talking about, and that's hence why I brought up Tim and stuff. So there we go.
Right, carry on, old chap.
Oh, thank you very much. Lee Mack. He's a fictionalized version of himself in this, thank goodness. Anyway, he's described as a laid-back and often jobless man who's always getting into trouble. But yeah, we know Lee for his stand-up comedy and being a team captain on Would I Lie to You? Sally Breton plays Lucy, and this is Lee's love interest and then later wife and the sister of Tim, who Lee lodges with. So Lucy's fairly sensible. She's a grounded character, and she sort of finds herself exasperated by Lee's antics, but obviously it didn't stop
put her off completely.
Yeah, that's right. Well said. So she's known for her role in the sitcom Green Wing, and she's been in... I've never heard of Green Wing.
Is that a hospital?
Sounds about right.
I've definitely heard of it.
Apparently she's been in various other TV dramas and comedies, but we referenced Tim Vine before, so let's move on to him. Now, as we said, he's not in this episode at all, but in the early series he plays Tim, unsurprisingly. They're very goodies-like in calling characters after their...
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Lee's best friend and original landlord. So Tim was an accountant who often gets caught up in Lee's schemes, but we know Tim Vine from being in the sketch show as well. He's got a very unique niche that he occupies in British comedy, I think, in terms of one-liners and various other things. Anyway, since he's not in this show, stuff him. Right, let's move on to Katie Wicks, who plays Daisy, who's also not in this. Now, this is Lucy's ditzy and eccentric friends. And as I said, she's not in this particular episode that we're about to cover. But yes, in general, in the early seasons of Not Going Out, she provides sort of comic relief with bizarre, nonsensical comments. So Katie Wicks is also known for her role in the sitcom Agatha Raisin and has been in Torchwood, etc., etc. As we move on to someone I recognise a lot more, which is Hugh Dennis, who plays Toby. Of course, I know him from, My Hero, Thermo Man, and all that sort of stuff as peers. But yeah, so Toby's a sort of sarcastic and almost cynical character who finds himself dragged into Lee's schemes. He is probably best known for Outnumbered, which I've not watched a lot of.
Yes, I've watched a fair chunk of it.
And
quite good.
Where do you rate it? Oh, quite good, very good.
That one, middle of the road. Some episodes better than others, but yeah, he does well in it.
Fair enough. And as far as panel shows goes, he was on Mock the Week. He's had a very long career in British comedy. There you go. So let's move on to Abigail Cruttenden. This is Anna, and this is Toby's wife and Lucy's friend. So it says here that Anna's a somewhat uptight and competitive character who contrasts with Lucy's more laid-back demeanour. And if that's a very nice way of saying she's an unlikable harridan, then so be it. The character, not the actress, I should point out. We're talking about Anna here, not Abigail. Yeah, but she's been in Benidorm, of course, where she played Kate Whedon. All right, let's get into some parents here. So we've got Wendy, which is Lucy's mum. Now, this is she's played by Deborah Grant. And she's, well, it says she's a somewhat overbearing and opinionated character who often clashes with Lee. But in this episode, she's just absolutely delightful and charming and funny and happy to be there and having a good time. So
Yeah.
I think AI might have screwed us on this one, or perhaps she, I don't know, perhaps she's just enjoying the escape room and is not being...
She's out of her normal self or something.
Yeah, that could be right. And as you can tell, dear listener, we've not watched a lot of Not Going Out. This is the third episode I've watched.
I've watched, 2 or 3 others, something like that.
I've enjoyed all of them, for the record. But yes, so Deborah Grant was in Bergerac and Peak Practice and things like that. But someone who was in a lot more sitcoms and stuff is Jeffrey Whitehead, who plays the character of Jeffrey, Lucy's dad. So he's described here as a stern and traditional character. I'd call him quite pompous. Anyway, but he always disapproves of Lee, Jeffrey does. But Jeffrey Whitehead himself, the actor, not the character, he's had a prolific career in telly, including roles in The Worst Week of My Life and, wait for it, Still Open All Hours.
Oof.
Now, his acting in Still Open All Hours is very good and convincing, but the character he plays is so spineless and gets dominated by the Black Widow, and he doesn't stand up for himself at all, so I don't like the character much. But I know him better from Time Gentlemen Please, where he played Bloody Cow Mrs. Jackson's dad, the owner of the brewery who liked to cut off people's trouser furniture, crush them into dust and put them in a rocket to send it to the heart of the sun, which is what he's constantly threatening to do to people.
So he plays a range of characters, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, he plays
From
spineless.
extremely violent to spineless.
Well, yes, he's got range. Anyway, let's finish up with Bobby Ball. Now, even I've heard of Cannon and Ball. Have you heard of Cannon and Ball, Steve? All right, so 80s comic duo. So Bobby Ball, who's no longer with us. So he plays Frank, which is Lee's dad, who's pretty much the opposite, as we're going to find out, of Jeffrey. Jeffrey's a tall, suit-wearing, sort of very straight-laced kind of dude, whereas Frank, Lee's dad, is clearly a hard drinker and attempts to be a womanizer, and he's just a flawed individual who Lee's always berating for various reasons. Anyway, he's described here, Steve, as being a cheeky, mischievous, irresponsible character who shares many of Lee's traits, much to Lucy's frustration. But he ends up being a bit of a hero in this episode.
Yeah. He's the one who... Well, no, I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, no, okay, yes, we're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we? But yeah, Bobby Ball was a beloved comedian, best known as one half of the comedy duo Cannon and Ball, and so he left us in 2020. So there we go.
I did notice that Miranda was in the cast at some point in the early days.
Semi-regular, would you say? Or?
I'm not sure. It was, yeah. Well, it must have been fairly regular in the first few seasons, I think. So, yeah, that would be interesting to check out. She's always good for a laugh. Yeah,
that's true. She might have got too pricey for them.
Maybe. She had to spread her wings and
that's right.
Do her own show,
because
probably.
I've got my own show going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a sneaky peek on IMDb, Steve, as we often do. This episode is rated 8.8. So if I round up, let's give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, not going out, not staying in, just hanging around with my head in a spin. But there is no need to scream and shout. We're not going out. We are not going out.
Oh, good. He's included some dramatic music because this isn't quite tense enough.
Jeffrey, what have you done?
Nothing. It isn't real. Is it?
Yes, it is. We're going to die.
It is all my fault. None of us are dead yet. we still got a chance of solving the puzzles and getting out of here. Frank, you're the problem-solving genius. Which is the right key?
I don't know.
Well, you see, when we really need him, he's got nothing.
You're just jealous because I'm better than you at doing mammograms.
The word is anagrams, you imbecile.
We are not going out.
So let's talk about the writers here, Steve, just briefly. Oh, so Lee clearly is one half of the writing duo that pumped this one out. The other one is a chap named Daniel Peake. So he has written 64 episodes of Not Going Out, which is a hefty number. Yeah. He's done 12 of Horrible Histories. Where do you stand on Horrible Histories?
Well, I have not watched it.
Ah, okay.
But the kids used to love it. More of a sketch show, if anything, so it's respectable. But having done that, you wouldn't think he's an automatic fit for a sitcom, so he's obviously gone on and done quite a lot of work. So
yeah, he's got form.
Yes. Yep.
So slightly less good reputationally is My Hero, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So he wrote 5 episodes for My Hero, but he wrote the episode where George Sunday loses his body in a poker game, episode 1 of series 6. And so therefore he has to get a new body, which is where it changes from Ardal O'Hanlon playing George Sunday to James Dreyfus playing George Monday.
Yep. That would
which is not its most shining.
Yeah, but I mean,
moment.
Tough assignment, surely.
Oh, yeah. That's it. You've written 3 episodes of this sitcom before. We want you to completely come up with a convincing way to cover the
segue from one completely different actor to another.
We covered My Hero in Sitcom Showdown episode 93, which is fairly recent-ish. So go and check that one out, dear listener, if you've not heard it. I'm praising it.
That was an Ardal one, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally. It was. It was the one where Mrs. Raven becomes a hypnotist, the world's greatest hypnotist. And George is getting very competitive about sports or something. Well, if it's not that one, then it was another one. And so, Steve, that brings us to the point where I have to talk for about another 6 hours because I have 4 pages of notes in the synopsis.
I think I dodged a bullet with this.
Oh, you did?
Synopsis.
And the reason for that, though, dude, you make a very good point, is because it's quite dense in terms of... Yeah. So for that reason, we're going to sort of circumvent that by using a hell of a lot of clips.
Okay. So we're using 40 or 50 15-second clips.
Yes.
It's basically the entire show spliced spliced together with us talking for 5 seconds in between.
It's like a YouTube reaction video. Bloody hell. So the episode opens with a blindfolded Lee. He's being led down these steps into what looks like a very grimy basement. And he's closely followed by Lucy, and so she wishes him happy birthday, and Lee's very puzzled because he's in this horrible dark basement, and it doesn't seem to be like much of a birthday present, if we're perfectly honest.
No.
Anyway, there's within seconds, there's a really good joke because she takes his blindfold off, and he goes, "Oh, can you put it back on?" And that's an old joke, but I do love that joke. It's a good one.
It had to be said.
Lucy quickly explains that he's in an escape room. And then she tries to tell him what an escape room is, but of course he sarcastically mentions, "Yes, I know what words mean." So he's figured it out, as we said before. So at this stage, Lee's dad walks in. Frank's immediately asking where the bar is. Lucy says there isn't one. And Frank says, "Look, when I was married to Lee's mum, an escape room was a bar." And then the punchline, of course, isn't what Frank says, but Lee follows up by saying, "Well, it must have been a hard escape room because you were in there for days." So that immediately gives us a bit of context about what sort of person Frank is. Now, I know most people watching the show would be well aware of who all these characters are, but they do a good job for us newbies of establishing what the deal is, but I'll elaborate on that later. Because at this stage, Lucy's parents have indeed arrived, and the 2 dads, Jeffrey and Frank, immediately start sniping at each other. And meanwhile, Lucy's mum, as I said earlier, she's this lovely, positive person, and she's all excited. And Anna and Toby, well, they start, Anna's complaining about everything. And Toby just looks very resigned, and he's defeatedly saying it took Anna 3 hours just to get out of the bathroom, so God knows how long they'll be in the escape room. So there's a lot of couple conflict.
Tension and stuff.
Yeah. They don't get on, clearly, or maybe they do, or maybe that's how they operate. I don't know. So everyone's arrived, and they open this envelope, which is placed very clearly on a table in the center of the room. Now, on this table in the center of the room, there's clearly objects on it, but it's all covered in a sheet. On top of this sheet is an envelope. So they open that. There's a note inside saying, padlock the door. So they padlock the door, the adventure begins, and Lee is not very keen about this because he's like, what happens if there's an emergency? How are we going to get out? Blah, 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 blah. So there has to be this bit of exposition about phones, right? Just to establish that none of them are going to have a mobile on, which would immediately ruin the plot.
Yep.
Okay? And so this is disguised in that Toby, who's clearly a prudent, sensible chappie, says, well, perhaps I should just nip out to the car and get my phone. And then Anna's, having a go at him for being a killjoy sort of wuss. Right, so the padlock is on. Lucy's dad, Jeffrey, immediately takes charge. He clearly thinks he's better. Yeah, tries to take charge. So he's obviously the person who thinks he's better than everyone else and smarter than everyone else, and he's just that sort of guy. So he goes, let's begin by looking for clues and asking ourselves, what would Holmes do? So you can see where this is going. But one of the people on IMDb who had commented on this episode said that was a particularly nifty little reference because he'd been in some Holmes and he might have even played Holmes in some TV and all that sort of stuff himself. So there we go, funny. Dude. Yeah.
In-joke.
Yeah. He is a bit of a Sherlock Holmesian. He has that sort of bearing. So anyway, the big sheet, they whip the sheet off, right? And it reveals what looks like a bomb with a huge red button on the top. It says, press me. Now, at this point, Steve, I've got to say that even though we're only a few minutes into the episode, there have been heaps of comments from everybody taking the absolute piss out of Lee.
I think it's good to establish this.
Yeah.
Early
for
on.
His birthday last year, where they'd gone to a place called Thorpe Park, which I'd never heard of, but it has the world's fastest roller coaster or something.
Yes, I also discovered that it's actually a real place in the UK.
Yeah, so I'm not much of a roller coaster person.
No, me either.
So
we're not even escape room people.
We'd be on the Lee side of the equation going, and they had to go at him for screaming, and he goes, well, it was scary, and he goes, yes, but you're only in the queue, and these sorts of jokes. So they're just constantly hanging it on Lee for being such a wuss when he was at Thorpe Park.
Yep.
And as it turns out, that's quite the plot point. Anyway, Lee doesn't want to press the big red button, so they tease him some more about being cowardly, and he slams it down, and this starts this 1 hour timer before the fake bomb explodes. And
bomb?
Yeah, fake
Question
bomb.
mark?
Question mark. Well said, Steve. Yeah, so the next instruction is to look inside the cupboard door. Now, this initially reveals nothing. But Frank, Lee's dad, said, no, you looked behind the cupboard door. You didn't look inside the cupboard door. So he deconstructs the cupboard door and he finds a clue, which is a videotape, which they then play. Now,
VCR.
Yeah, the VCR. Classic, even in 2018. So, Steve, at this point, we see a rather wild man appear, who I remember as Bosch, my favourite character from House of Fools, but I'm going to hand over to you.
Well, it's Dan Renton Skinner, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, who we've talked about before in, several shows, I think.
Totally. What's your favourite role of his?
What's the show with the puppets?
Oh, what, Yonderland?
Yonderland, he plays the husband of the... Yeah. Well, it's funny in that show because she goes off and has all these adventures and comes home to him at the end of the day, and there's always a funny scene where he's completely oblivious to what's going on in this fantasy world that she's now spending her life in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when all these things come through the portal and there's weird stuff happening in his house, he just doesn't notice.
Yeah. And that's compared to his other characters, that's a very tame character, I would say.
Yeah, completely.
What about you?
Bosch from House of Fools. I like the character of Bosch, who evolves. There was only 2 series, but he's a completely different character in Series 2 to what he is in Series 1.
Yeah.
So I think, in Series 2, he just said, well, I'm just going to do my own thing here. With hilarious results. So there we go. Right, anyway, here I want to point out a great nasty joke, Steve.
Ooh.
Where Jeffrey congratulates Frank on finding this clue inside the cupboard door. And he says, it's good all those years of hiding things from prison warders weren't wasted. Which is, yes. Normally I'm not a fan of humour where it's just people bickering with each other, but if it's done well, then that's fine. Toby comments as they're watching the videotape, you know. He's commenting, oh, I've seen this bloke before on this videotape, and he thinks he's an actor or something. And then they make jokes that he's acting so bad it wouldn't be on the telly. So Lee makes a quip that you certainly wouldn't see him on the BAFTAs. And so that's when I thought, is this another inside joke? Has Dan Renton Skinner won a BAFTA or something like that? So I looked it up. Well, no, he hasn't, is the short answer to that. So even though we've established that Dan Skinner doesn't have a BAFTA, maybe they are having a dig at themselves. So Hugh Dennis was nominated for a BAFTA in 2010 for Best Male Performance in a Comedy Role for Outnumbered, the Christmas special, but he did not win.
Oh,
now, I don't think the writers have put that in just to make Hugh Dennis feel bad. Have you got some notes to read out at this point?
No.
Oh, cool. Anyhow, after the video speech by the unnamed mad escape room bloke, who I'm just going to call Bosch, his final words stick in the minds of our characters because he said that he must have a screw loose and he doesn't want to keep them in the dark for long. So, again, it's here that Jeffrey comes up with some heavily convoluted bit of detective work based on classic literature to point out how well-read he thinks he is. And before he's even finished outlining his theory and pontificating away, Frank has already... Yeah, Frank's outsmarted him again and found a locked box in a cabinet that had a screw loose. So, I like all these interchanges between Frank and Jeffrey, which normally it's not the sort of humour I like, but I think we should have a clip.
Well done, Frank. You're clearly ahead of the rest of us.
Yes, well done, Frank. Somehow managing to get inside the mind of a bitter, delusional alcoholic better than anyone else.
We'll open it then.
Oh, it's a lot with numbers on.
I think I've got it.
Go on.
Was he the coroner in Midsummer Murders?
It's Lee's birthday. Try putting in his age.
It's a 3-digit padlock.
All right, try putting in Jeffrey's age.
So the lockbox, Steve, it's got a 3-digit combo on it, right? So they need 3 numbers, and this is where the second part of the clue comes in about not being in the dark for long. So again, Frank nails this by unscrewing the single light bulb after Jeffrey thought, I'll turn the lights off and reveal... And then he turns the lights off and nothing happens. And so again, Jeffrey's left looking like a tool.
This is after Frank suggests that the 3-digit number could be Jeffrey's age. Bit rude. There's just constant quips like that.
Yeah, it is pretty packed with that sort of gear. So anyway, Frank unscrews the what we would call the standard light bulb, and of course there's a ultraviolet light that reveals 3 numbers on the wall. So they whack that into the lockbox, open that up. You're gonna, by the way, listener, there's going to be a lot of this finding of clues and all that sort of stuff, so bear with us. So they find a pair of handcuffs. Now suddenly, Steve, the lights go off again unexpectedly, and there's a scream from Lee. So when the lights come back on, we see him handcuffed to the bomb. And now Lee's frantic at this stage. He's starting to flip out.
Yeah.
And the next couple of minutes are all about Lee accusing various people of handcuffing him to the bomb, and everyone's denying it. And then he's sort of going one by one, and Jeffrey goes, this is a marvellous method you've got here. Lee, just you going around the room and people denying it.
It's the process of elimination.
Now, in addition, Steve, to, Frank and Jeffrey always being nasty to each other, you always get these quips from Anna and Toby being nasty to each other.
There's some classics.
We do get some absolute classics. So I want to play you a clip.
That door is padlocked from the inside, which means one of you lot must have done it. So whoever it was, get them off right now.
Oh, calm down, Lee. It's not a real bomb. It probably just shoots out confetti.
Yes, in my face.
He could go in his eye and cause an ocular trauma.
Oh, for God's sake, Toby. No one ever had a traumatic experience triggered by confetti.
So, dear listener, that long pause you heard after what appeared to be the punchline was taken up on screen by the look on Toby's face. And I'll hand over to you here, Steve.
Well, they don't close the joke out with any further lines or anything like that. It's just the expression on his face as he's pondering this, as if to say, well, yes, I am triggered by the thought of confetti. Harking back to our marriage.
So, do you rate that gag quite highly?
Oh, I think it's the funniest joke in the whole... There are some complete crackers, which I'll mention later on, but I think that's the funniest one in the whole thing for me.
I agree. I reckon it's an absolute standout. But yeah, it's good that they didn't go for any obvious follow-up and they just let Hugh Dennis, do the talking with his face. Anyway, they notice that the handcuffs have got a clue engraved on them that says, quote, "Find the enemy within," unquote. And so this is what they do, right? And they eventually discover, and I've skipped through quite a bit of stuff here, but they eventually discover it was Wendy that handcuffed Lee to the bomb. Now, she'd had email instructions from the escape room guy, right? And again, this is going to be important later on. But along the way, in finding out that Wendy was the person who handcuffed Lee, and this has got to do with a clue of a huge taxidermied swan. And, there's a little sign beneath this swan that says, "My dead swan." So Jeffrey goes off on one of his literary detective work pompous lectures saying, well, a swan is called a signet, and that could be a baby swan is a signet, and that's and he's just going on, and Frank just rearranges the letters of "My dead swan" and gets Wendy Adams. And that's...
I find it interesting that Wendy was the one that did the padlock. They were all saying, or half of them were saying, well, I don't know about putting the padlock on because then we're shut in here. And she impetuously padlocked them in. Yeah. And now she's the one that handcuffs
Lee to the bomb.
So, yeah.
Oh, she's in on it.
It's interesting.
What I love, because this gets increasingly to be the case, is every time Jeffrey, he's outsmarted by Frank, which just happens over and over again, he gets increasingly livid on this one. Everyone in the room bursts into applause when Frank... So Jeffrey not only gets humiliated, but then Frank gets a round of applause. I think that's nearly the last straw for Jeffrey. Anyway, Wendy was told that when they found out it was her, she should give them another clue. Frank quickly finds another videotape. So his process of thinking was that this deal that the escape room guy made with Wendy was done in secret, or to put it in another way, under the table. Yes. But anyway, I think we should have another clip.
Just pause this tape and break away the plaster on the left-hand side of the TV, and there you'll find the key.
Stand back.
Seriously, stand back. Toby is useless at DIY. He once put up some shelves and accidentally injured me 2 rooms away.
Accidentally? $2. But each of them's got a key.
Which key do we use?
Now, as you heard, there was something hidden behind the plaster or the concrete, and that was a tin box with 2 dolls in it, and each doll has a key. But before I move forward, I just want to say I love that 2 rooms away DIY gag. And again, it's one of those jokes where your mind has to conjure up a situation where that could possibly happen, and that's where the humour lies. But anyway, yes, they press play on the second videotape again to hear the rest of the instructions from the escape room guy. And he reveals that using one key will defuse the bomb and the other key will set it off. And that's going to level everything for half a mile. But the man gives them another clue, saying they've got to look at the bigger picture. Now, there's no other pictures on the walls here, but Frank says there was a picture in the first video of the mad escape room guy with his wife at the party. And Lee says, Dad has a keen eye for other people's wives. Which another dig at his dad. So clearly there's some trauma there with Lee. Obviously, Frank was a bit of an absent father who was a philanderer and all that sort of thing.
Yep, bit of wandering.
Now, Steve, and now, dear listener, this is where the plot gets super interesting. We're entering the second half now, where it's very high stakes, very tense, final 15 minutes of the episode. And the way this happens is that they look at that first picture that the mad escape room guy is holding up in the video, and they see Lee in the background of this photo.
What's that all about? Yes.
And then they figure out that Toby is also in the photo, and Toby remembers the very party the picture was taken at. Now, a lot of what follows is all of them talking, and it gets quite complex, and it would have been extremely tedious to type out and for me to explain, so I think we need yet another clip.
And I know why I recognise that guy now. I worked with him at the hospital.
You knew him?
Well, hardly. He was in IT in the department that I joined, but he left shortly after I'd started.
Left? Said on that tape he was sacked. What exactly was your job in this new department?
Well, I was brought in to implement some sort of efficiency programs, which meant a bit of streamlining.
You got him the sack.
Well, I could be mistaken. It's difficult to remember with all the staff that come and go.
So all this could be real.
May I remind you that Lucy chose this experience, not vice versa.
Actually, that's not exactly how it happened.
What do you mean?
I didn't contact them, they contacted me.
Please keep talking, this just gets better and better.
I assume you checked out the company. They must have had a website or something.
Well, in the email, he said he hadn't had a chance to set one up yet. Said that it was a brand new experience and that we'd be the first.
He didn't say anything about us being the last, did he?
Look, he's not a maniac. This is all part of the game.
Yes, as I said earlier, this is where the episode gets very good, very tense. And there's a series of really interesting reveals, just reveal after reveal after reveal. And even better, they're all punctuated with jokes, which is pretty cool. So the mad escape room bomb killer guy, Bosch, is actually after Toby. And we find out that Wendy was supposed to have handcuffed Toby to the bomb, not Lee, but, you know, to be fair, it was dark.
Yes, one hand is very much like another in the dark.
Ooh, quite. So we can hear the bomb beeping away in the background, right? So I think maybe that's a nice bit of sound design where, because, you know, I mean, it's been beeping away in the background at a very low level, but what they've done now is I think they've purposely ramped that sound up, which is very cool. And all the dialogue between the characters is becoming faster and more pointed and shoutier and all of this. So the cast are doing a really good job. So Lee at this point, who's in even more of a panic, he's scrambling to get the facts straight, right? So he urges everyone to just tell the truth about the situation and one by one so they can get a complete picture of what the bloody hell's going on. And Toby says, look, I really did cut that guy from the company. And Lucy says she really did book the escape room after getting this random email that offered her a good deal. And so Lee asks his dad, Frank, if this could be a prank that he's masterminded. And I like the funny reply that Frank's idea of a hilarious prank is farting when Lee pulls his finger. Which not only is a good joke, but again, it just goes to show Frank's a simple man with simple humour and he doesn't do elaborate pranks. So everyone starts panicking at this stage, and Wendy picks up the two dolls with the keys, and she tells Frank to think about it, and which key should they use. So clearly Frank's the escape room whisperer at this point, so they go to him for advice straight away. And it's time for another clip.
The man said look back at the old clues.
Yes, and we did that, and we made the connection to Toby.
But how does that help us now?
Well, last time, when we worked out that Wendy was a secret agent, it was linked to the Swan. This time, it might link Toby to the dolls.
Yeah, we don't have an anagram this time. We only have the letters A and B.
All right, let's think about this. Two Victorian dolls, each with a key, both made of fine biscuit porcelain. What do we know about fine biscuit porcelain? What?
Got it.
You can't have...
I have. It's
Don't say it. Just give me a minute.
You what?
You'll be kicking yourselves.
I'll be bloody kicking you if you don't say it!
For God's sake, just spit it out.
It's an anagram of Toby. Toy B.
God damn it!
Sorry, I've been smiling through this whole recounting of this episode, and that is absolutely my favourite section of the whole thing because there's just so much tension. So this is the point where they get the key from Toy B, right? And so obviously they think they should put that into the keyhole at the top of the bomb, turn it to defuse the bomb. However...
But is that what he wants you to do?
Yes, and I think Lucy, it might have been cleverly pointed out that in the video he said put it to the best use. And the best use for Bosch the Mad Bomber guy might be to blow them all to smithereens. So maybe they should use the key from doll A.
Sounds a bit like the Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah. Nice reference there, Steve. Or in Pyramids of Mars with Tom Baker, where he's got to solve that riddle with the two mummies and all that sort of stuff. Anyhow, needless to say, with seconds ticking down, they choose to use key A against the advice of the escape room person, and it diffuses the bomb, and we can all take a breath, finally.
Or can we?
And you might think it's all over at that point, but it's not. So anyway, they figure out that the other key must, undo the padlock.
Well, you think so?
And this is the best. So they go over to the padlock. Toby pops the key into the lock, and it fits. And they're like, yes. And he turns it, and then suddenly, and this is beautiful prop work, a little red light starts flashing on the padlock. What? And then it starts off the bomb again.
Oh, and it's running down even faster than it was before.
So everyone's completely freaking out, and everything's about to blow up. So they all take shelter in their own way, uselessly, hiding under a table or whatever they're doing, and everyone's crouching in fear. And with the final beeps of the bomb, it suddenly changes tempo and notes to start beeping happy birthday as a hatch opens on the bomb and a cupcake emerges up, coming up on a platform with a lit candle in this cupcake. And Lee starts singing a very special version of Happy Birthday. I'm not sure we can justify another clip, but he's singing the lyrics to Happy Birthday and in a special way that points out that all of them are suckers and he's completely pranked them like an absolute master.
I've got written down here, death glances, which is what he's getting from everyone at this point.
Yeah, so we find out that all of this has been incredibly well-planned prank by Lee to humiliate all the people who laughed at him last year so cruelly at Thorpe Park after his own embarrassing behaviour. And so now, whenever they bring that up, he'll be able to bring this up. And personally, I think that is a superb ending. But wait, Steve, there's more.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
There's a cherry on top.
Yeah, there is. So after Lee reveals all and has his revenge, he mentions that the real keys are in his pockets. Now, bear in mind, he's still handcuffed to the bomb at this stage. So Lucy reaches into his pocket and gets them and unlocks the door. Now, everyone's very pissed off at Lee at this point. There is one final turning of the tables where they all go off to the pub and leave Lee handcuffed to the pretend bomb and just shutting him in the room, which Lee doesn't like at all. But then once they've all left, he's still so pleased with himself. Yeah. He just starts munching on the cupcake.
He's not too fussed.
Yeah. And that brings us to the end of this episode. And I, for one, Steve, was very highly impressed. What about you?
Well, I think it was superbly done. And we'll get into a bit of the detail of that in a minute, I guess. You think he could have just picked up the fake bomb and walked over to the door, or was it actually fixed to the table?
I wondered that myself. Was it fixed to the table? That would explain a lot, but they didn't make that clear. Or is it just so heavy that...
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to ponder. Look, overall, I'd have to say I watched this, 3 or 4 times, and I couldn't really pick any major plot holes in it, which is pretty impressive considering how intricate it was and everything like that.
Yeah.
So, yes, it was well done. Yes. Where do we go from here?
Well, I've got a few sort of last thoughts, and that is that there were, I'd say, between 5 and 10 laugh out loud moments in this for me. And that's quite rare, because I find stuff funny, but like it's rare that I'll laugh out loud to the point where I go, oh my God, I laughed out loud at that. And there were plenty of those moments in this, which has got to be a very good sign and a positive recommendation there.
I do have a few I wrote down. Do you want me to share those?
Yeah,
now,
please.
Yep, okay. Look, Toby gets I think I can say, well, in my opinion, he gets the best lines out of anyone in this episode. There's some real crackers. So he says in one of them that he was lured here by a madman bent on revenge, thinking of the guy on the TV.
Yeah.
Right, his ex-co-worker, but it's a subtle double meaning because obviously, Lee is the madman.
All the time I was
yeah. Someone asks Lee, what's the scariest thing it could be? A ticket to Thorpe Park?
Oh, no.
And I don't know if you caught, but at one point they mentioned Billy Badger's big bumpy boat. I think that must be the ride that they were queuing up for when Lee had his freak out. Which is not actually it's not actually a real life ride.
Oh, you fact checked that?
Yeah, fact checked it. Yeah. Anyway, I think the name of that is absolutely hilarious. And again, another Toby line. Someone asks him, "Did you do the zombie escape room, Toby?" He says, "No, but I do share a bed with Anna."
Yeah.
Pretty rude. And the final one is a Frank line, where he says that he is better at doing mammograms. Yes, that's my little list.
Fantastic. Something we should probably mention is that you get bottle episodes in sitcoms, right? And so normally I would suggest it's 2 or 3 characters in one very small location. And here we're on one set, cheaper to film, and you're paying fewer actors and stuff. Although in this case, we've got quite a few actors.
Yeah, it is interesting how it's a bottle episode, but all the main actors, I guess, from the current cast is in it. So.
Well, I did try to think of other sitcom episodes that do this, and I don't think it happens very often, but it's the sort of thing you would get in Dad's Army. And maybe, I think occasionally in Are You Being Served, you do get all of them, not in Grace Brothers, trapped somewhere or doing something. But yeah, you don't see it very often. Another thing that I want to do is mention I'm sure there must be a technical term for this, but it's where you get punchline after punchline after punchline after punchline. And you get quite a bit of that in this. And there's particularly one where you've got like 3 punchlines in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where Frank gets the round of applause and he goes, stop, this is getting embarrassing. And Jeffrey goes, I'm sure you can handle it, because, he's implying that Frank is used to being embarrassed all the time because he's an embarrassment. And then Frank flips it around on here. He goes, no, I meant embarrassing for you. But they leave, just enough pause and all that. And then you think, oh, that's a sick burn, followed by another sick burn, followed by another. Yeah. And I like the way they just stack up the punchlines. It's really cool.
The direction of that particular scene was really good because, and I should say, although it's a bottle episode, they seem to have many cameras shooting different things throughout the whole thing. And this particular example, with Jeffrey and Frank, the one's in the foreground, one's in the background, and they're kind of exchanging lines. And as it moves between one and the other, it's the same camera, but they're just kind of shifting the focus from the front to the back, and just gives you that bit of extra depth to a show which is essentially set in the same room that's 5 meters by 10 meters or something like that.
Excellent. And I can only imagine, Steve, that it's superbly lit if this sitcom keeps getting nominated for the Nights of Illumination Awards and all that sort of stuff. So
those Nights of Illumination, they know what they're on about.
They bloody well do. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a fan of comedy where people keep picking at each other, but when it's done well, it's fantastic. So in Fawlty Towers, it's done well. And here, I'd say it's done not as well as your Fawlty Towers or whatever. I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10, though, because often I just think because they're just unlikable. But no, it's done really well here between Frank and Jeffrey, as we said, and between Anna and Toby. And there's a little bit between, Lee and everybody, I suppose, because that's just who Lee is and how he operates.
Well, after I watched it the first time, I thought Lee was pretty mean putting everyone through this psychological warfare. But then when I rewatched it the second and third times, I picked up how many times they paid him out for this excursion on his birthday the previous year. So the more I watched it, the more I felt he might have been justified in paying them back a bit.
Yeah, it's always good when someone gets a victory, but, let's face it, he's still going to be trapped in the room for the next few hours while they have a good time at the pub.
I want to know what happens on his next birthday. They're going to come up, they're going to cook up some crazy payback for him.
Cool, blimey. Well, this is the sort of show that does do callbacks to various things, so maybe we'll have to check out more Not Going Out in the future. But yes, as we draw to the close here, Steve, I would say that although the way this show has evolved, we're not really nominating stuff for the Hall of Fame anymore, and this was a listener suggestion from Kieran, I would still definitely put this in the Hall of Fame.
I would too. Yeah, I thought it was really good. Just one last thing I wanted to mention was with the writing of this episode. Obviously, as you come into the start of the episode, you're not really sure. You kind of lean towards it being a proper escape room experience that's been organised in the normal way, and it's only Lee that's kind of questioning that it may be something different. But then the way it's written, it kind of eliminates slowly through the episode the chance of it being a legit escape room experience. And by the time we're kind of 2/3 of the way through it and the music kicks in and the drama and everything like that, I mean, the first time through, I was pretty much convinced that this was something set up by this ex-workmate of Toby's who was going off. There's a bit where you find out that no, they didn't contact the escape room company to organise this thing. They were emailed just out of the blue by the company with a special offer or something like that.
Yeah, because it was their first time.
Yeah, because it was their first time. And then you're going, oh, hang on, maybe it is just...
I was totally convinced.
You were?
Yeah. That, it was
like
a
I
real
said.
bomb and all that, and then they flip it, and then they flip it again, and
Yep, that's really well done.
it truly is. And by the way, thank you, Kieran, for that suggestion of doing Not Going Out. Now, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do, Steve, and so what we're likely to do with the future of Sitcom Showdown is to shut down the Libsyn feed. So that's our podcast host, because as people might know, we put all our episodes up on YouTube. And so what we're going to do is from here on in, everything is going to go on YouTube. So if you subscribe to us through one of your podcast apps, then it's likely to go away. I don't know when this is going to happen. We might keep the hosting going for another year or something. Who knows? But what I would suggest is if you do want to keep listening, go over to YouTube, subscribe on there if you're a YouTube type person. But yeah, the feed might suddenly drop off and you'll be wondering what's going on. Now, the other thing is that we actually kept a decent schedule for 8 years. And even this year, we weren't doing too bad. And then there's been nothing between, I think, July and December. So our schedule's gone completely out the window. So there's real life reasons for all of this. Nothing bad. But yes, so from also the other bit of housekeeping is we can't promise a regular schedule from here on in. It's likely to be very, very random and long gaps in between. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But please do keep that YouTube subscription going. And so, in 6 months when there is another episode or whatever, then it'll appear on your feed. So there we go. And that's the end of episode 112 for us. And I think it was an absolute cracker.
It was. Yep, very good selection.
All
Thanks,
right.
Jeff. Yeah, thank you, listeners. We'll see you sometime in the future.
Bye.
Bye.
Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.